Amerika Birləşmiş Ştatlarının Los Angeles şəhəri tamamilə başqa bir aləmdir. Daha doğrusu kino aləmi. Və təsadüfi deyil ki, bu şəhəri dünya kino sənayesinin paytaxtı hesab edirlər. Çünki dünyanın ən nüfuzlu kino şirkətləri Disney, Universal, Paramount və digər bu qəbildən olan iri konqlomeratların tərkibində olan şirkətlər, eləcə də Amerika Televiziya Akademiyası və Amerika Film Akademiyası məhz Los Angeles'da yerləşir. Mən də Los Angeles'da olduğum müddətdə Amerika Televiziya Elmləri və Sənətləri Akademiyasının üzvü kimi Sinema Radionun xüsusi buraxılışını hazırlamağa qərar aldım və illər boyu televiziya ekranından tanıdığım aktyorlar Martinez və Harley Kozakla görüşdüm. Söhbətimiz çox maraqlı alındı.
I was 5 years old, and my mother was a professor of music at a college, and it was an opera, Dido and Aeneas, and she was playing the sorceress, and they needed some little angels to pray over a body. And so they recruited children from the kindergarten, and because I was in kindergarten, we call it nepotism, I was asked to play the part of a little angel, and so I got to stay up very late, past my bedtime, wear red lipstick and a white angel costume. And when I was on stage, I did not realize the lights would go off in the house, and the stage lights would be so bright. It was so thrilling to me and a little bit terrifying, but in a good way. And to see my mother dressed as a witch and singing in a mezzo-soprano voice. And it was the most dramatic thing I'd ever experienced, and I think I blame it all on that moment.
Oh my gosh, that's just great. What a great thing to have gone through. I don't even know what the moment was. In our church, we did a Thanksgiving pageant called TiVo and his turkey, and I somehow ended up getting to be TiVo. I was just a wee lad, and then later I sang in the Glee Club in junior high school, and our teacher put on abbreviated versions of Broadway musicals, and she cast me in The King and I, and HMS Pinafore, and West Side Story, and I wasn't expecting to do any acting, but she made that happen. And I think that King and I story, I played the Crown Prince. I was downstage as my father, the king, was dying, with Anna tending him, and all the reforms that she had brought to the kingdom were now going to be enacted as proclaimed in the last speech by the Crown Prince. And I was downstage in my junior high school auditorium, and I was saying, this is the way it's going to be now. This is the way it's going to be. He's upstage left dying, my father. And then it's over. And there was silence. And I was very disturbed by the silence. I thought, oh, I did something wrong. And then there was a release of enthusiasm. And I just thought, this is amazing that this happened. I did something that made people feel. And afterwards, the single most badass guy in my family, the guy who had gone away with my daddy's little sister and disappeared with her for a while and put the whole family in a tizzy, he came backstage, and I looked in his face and I thought, this man has been crying, and that I could do something to make a man like that feel something was addictive. I just thought, I want to be doing this for the rest of my life.
in feature films, you might shoot 3 pages a day. So if you haven't learned your lines by the time you get to the set, which of course would never happen with A or me, but if you haven't learned your lines, you can pretty much, learn them as you're eating your breakfast. In television, especially soap operas like Santa Barbara, oh my God, it's so fast. You have to know your lines. You cannot wing it.
Well, that's it in a nutshell. That's the difference of it. It's how much work do you have to accomplish in any given amount of time. And if I always look back now, I've done a lot of things in my career that were less than the highest echelon of movie making. And one of the things that those productions have in common is they tend to they need to be done quickly, because there isn't enough money to spend 16 weeks, like that was the high water mark for me, doing the Cowboys, 16 weeks to make the Western. I was like, this is the way I want to work. And I told my agent, I want to do more of this. And I waited 11 months with no job. And then I thought, well, actually, I wouldn't mind doing television. I think I'll go back and do a little TV. I can be quick. So,
Yes.
but the training that we received from having done the soap opera, Santa Barbara in particular, I think set us up to be able to do a lot of work that a lot of actors would have trouble with, because we know how to process information quickly and we know how to learn our lines extremely efficiently.
Who invited you?
I had been doing a soap in New York
Yes.
called Guiding Light. And I was at the end of my 2-year contract, and I thought, I don't want to do any more soaps. I want to see what else is out there for acting. And then LA called, and they said, we're interested in having you audition for this. And I went, okay, because I thought, oh, I've always wanted to see California and maybe live there a little bit. And so I flew out and auditioned, and I flew home, and they said, okay, you got the job, can you be here tomorrow? And so I packed up all my stuff, put it in storage, flew to Los Angeles, and I never went back.
Wow.
I mean, I had to go back to take my stuff out of storage, but that was it. It changed the whole trajectory of my life. I never meant to move here for good, but here I am.
Wow. My agent tricked me. He told me that it was a nighttime show, like Dallas or Dynasty. And so I got interested in it based on that. And when I found out that it was a daytime show, I was scared. I didn't think it was possible to do that. We talk about being slow. I mean, if you're slow, if you're born slow, you're always slow. You get slower, not faster. But except I did learn how to memorize lines more quickly. But I was terrified of it. I didn't want to do it. And I actually said no to it. And my good fortune was that the Dobsons, who were in charge of it, thought that I was just negotiating. But I really was saying no because I was afraid to do it. I thought it would be something I could not do. And finally, the casting director, Reuben Cannon, I think his name was, he got to my manager and said, hey, he needs to stop and think about this. Because I was 16 years in, and I'd been doing episodic television and some movies, but no one really seemed to know or care about my work in any big scale. So he said, this might end up being a chance for him to exercise his heart, as opposed to always being, the kid from the wrong side of the tracks that the hero of the show, Beretta or Columbo or Barnaby Jones, knows as a good kid. But I was playing that same part over and over and over again. And he said this could be a chance to actually have him exercise his heart. It could be really good for him. So I said yes finally, luckily. See, I told you this would be more quiet.
Police too.
Oh, good.
And police station.
We're
Yeah.
protected, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all I have to say on it. I'm not sure if you could hear it through the mechanical beast, but yeah, I basically said no because I was afraid, and I got talked into saying yes, and I'm very grateful for the rest of my life.
No, they told me before I read it in the script. So our executive producer called me into her office and she said, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're dying. And I thought, oh, wow, that's surprising. And I said, okay, how long have I got? And she said, well, Tuesday.
Oh, God.
And I went, wow, okay, well, I hope at least I have a memorable death. And she said, oh, yeah, yes. And she was right. And I had mixed feelings about it. Once the shock subsided, I was, my best friend at the time was actually dying of AIDS. And that, I think, gave me such a different perspective that I was unable to just think, oh my God, this is a tragedy for me. Well, yes and no. Not compared to a real life tragedy, right?
Yeah.
So, and then the other part of it was that in my career as an actor, I've always really loved working, but I've never had a really long-term job. And I always feel kind of itchy after about a year. It just seems to be my own rhythm. So I've done a lot of television shows that have only lasted one season. And that always kind of suits me. It feels like the right thing. And so I thought, well, I had a really good year on the show and I get a really dramatic death. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you return after many episodes for
they-
short time, for 2 episodes.
Yes, they said to me afterwards, because I think they underestimated how popular the character was, and because she was in love with Lane, who's everybody's favorite, and the audience was looking to have a wedding, and to be deprived of a wedding, and it was so shocking, I think they underestimated the audience response. And so they asked me to come back as, like another character. Sure. And I said, well, I'm dead. And they said, well, you could be your twin, or there's ways around death. But I said, I think I'm supposed to move on. I think that it's a sign, if you will, that I'm supposed to move on. And they said, well, then will you just come back for a few episodes as an angel? And I said, of course.
I think I didn't do that hardly at all.
Didn't?
No. The only thing that happened was that I talked to somebody, probably Jill Phelps, about the fact that I had lost this movie audition at Play in the Fields of the Lord. It was based on that book. And I wanted that part so bad.
Yeah.
And I got to say, to this day, and this is the only time it's happened, but to this day, when I think of that movie, I think they made a mistake. They should have cast me. I understand that the business says cast the bigger name and stuff, and usually you look at something you did not get and you go, oh, I see why I didn't get that. I really could not do anything as good as what that person did who got that part. But I thought I should have played that role. And one of the things that happened in that book was that the character that I wanted to play was dealing with a religious experience that he had behind ayahuasca. And I thought, I understand this because of certain habits I have in my real life. And I really, it just seemed like I should have played the part. And somehow that conversation led to a moment being written for me and my father, Cruz and his father, Raphael, who was played by Henry Darrow.
Yes.
And Henry Darrow took Cruz out into the desert when Cruz was letting his life fall apart because he was bitter about the fact that he had lost his place as the only vision of possibility in Eden's life. He was pouting. He was feeling sorry for himself. And Raphael took him out in the desert and left him alone and tossed him a bota bag that we had determined would be filled with a liquid version of this psychoactive plant.
Wow.
And I got to play someone who went through a close brush with death to get my head right.
Wow.
And I won my Emmy for that.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was, I didn't
Wow.
suggest that story. I didn't ask for that story, but conversations about real life made that story happen.
So that was your own at play in the fields of the Lord.
I felt I got a moment. I felt I got a moment.
Screenplay.
I had a habit of, and I still do it.
Just process.
I just write out everything with my hand. So I take what is a typed paper that comes out of a computer, a piece of technology, and I write it in my own hands, and the process of just even that movement puts it into my body, and it has a little bit of an alchemical effect. And then I always had the habit of, I would either run or swim, and I would write on these little note cards, and I would do them as I was taking a walk or walking the dog or swimming, or if I was and I still do it to this day. And many years later, I read something that neuroscience has determined that the best way to memorize something is to do back and forth, side to side movement with your body while you're learning. And I had discovered this accidentally,
Oh my God.
just to save time. And so that was that's how I've always done it. And it's almost to the point where I feel if I have not written down my lines, I can't do it.
Wow. I did the exact same thing. I'm wondering, did we ever have a conversation about this?
I
Because
don't
I was doing
know.
the same thing. I was writing things out, but I was so slow that it finally. I remember one day going on, beginning to tape the show, and I was still writing, the last scene out.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I did know
it
that.
worked. It worked.
Yeah.
And it has always worked. And what I'll do, basically now with it is, when I'll get a script, and I usually have some idea of something I want to do, what the ideas are I want to impose. I will write stuff all over the place, and just, everything that comes through this seems like a useful thing. Part of it is to learn the words. Part of it is to hold on to the ideas that come. I remember on the moment where I was brought into the circle of trust on Longmire, where the executive producer said, "Do you want to know what's going to happen in the story?" And I said yes. On that day, I had a huge part, and I had written all these notes. My script was just dense with notes. And at one point in time, she said, "You changed this word in this speech." And I said, "Yeah, I know, but I'm using it down here later in the speech, and I don't want to give the power of the word away early on. I want to put this other word." She said, "Well, that other word doesn't mean the same thing." Yeah. I said, "Well, nevertheless, I don't want to, it needs to be here, more importantly, down here at the payoff. That's where its power needs to stay." So I had to change it to something else, and she said, "Well, let me see." And basically she sat next to me and I opened it. And it was the first time she'd ever actually had two people ever see the evidence of your process.
Yeah.
And it was like a whole revelation of, oh, you're doing this on a really painstaking level. And so, I feel to this day, that's how I hold it. I just make sure that I don't think of something and forget it by writing it down. And writing it down helps to bring it in and hold it. And I'll remember this for the rest of my life, Harley. So thank you for saying that. That's so good. I didn't know that.
And one other thing, the more you do it, the better you get. It's like muscles. It's a muscle.
Right.
Yeah.
And I found, I always tell my kids this, like when we're trying to learn pieces for the piano and stuff. When you make a mistake, don't go back to the beginning.
Yes.
If you're making a mistake,
Yes.
find the place that's the problem and build something around that. Put a poultice on it. Make it sturdier. And then next time you go through it, you'll be able to slip right over it.
Yep.
Yep.
Speed again,
Yeah.
and money. Money. So nighttime TV, more money. So for a pilot episode, I don't know how many millions of dollars they have in their budget to do the first hour or 2 hours of a long-running series. In daytime, whatever the budget is, it's a fraction of that, and you shoot it in 1 day. You don't shoot it in 10 days, you shoot it in 1 day.
Yep. Hard to believe, but you do. Yeah, that's the main difference.
They're not very famous. They're famous among my family and friends. I wrote 4 books that are about one character. So, and they're murder mysteries. Then I wrote 1 book that is a paranormal murder mystery. So it has to do with vampires and shapeshifters. And then I've written many short stories, and I'm working right now on my 6th novel, which is different from everything else. They've been translated. I think the closest they would come to Azerbaijan is they've been translated into Serbian, some of them, and also Japanese, but I don't think that's very close to you geographically.
Yeah, yes, I am. My family are all musicians, and I think that's probably true because, of the example that I set. Also, my wife, her mom trained for the opera, so she and her sister walked around making fun of her mom by doing the scales and and running the scales. But while they were making fun of her, they were actually executing the scales. So my wife is a really good singer, and she and my son and my daughter-in-law all sing in this band, the New Old. My daughter Devin sang on a high-level group out of Yale, and my daughter Ren is a singer-songwriter that had a song on Billboard's Top 25 Rock Songs of the Year. I think it was 2019. So everybody's a singer, and everybody's a writer as well. And I think for me, the reason it happened was we sang as kids. My father was a teacher. He brought the auto harp home and the songbooks, and so we sang. And then I got in the glee club, and you just start singing and singing and singing, and the joy of singing takes over. And eventually, I was at a movie. I think it was, I can't remember the name of it, but I believe it was an Alan Rudolph movie. And at the end of the movie, a guy walks up to me who I know kind of vaguely. He's through a friend. His name was Richard Baskin. He's of the Baskin-Robbins ice cream empire.
I knew Richard Baskin.
You know Richard Baskin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Richard, who
years ago.
Yeah, and he was friends with Barbara Streisand.
Yes.
Real good friends. Yeah, Richard, a cool guy.
Yeah.
Wonderful guy.
Very.
Wonderful musician. He walks up to me after the theater in the lobby. He goes, "Hey, man, you got to come to my mom's house. There's a party. You got to hear something." I go, "Hey, man, thanks, but I got plans." He goes, No, you got to come right now. It's really important." I go, "No, seriously, thank you so much, Richard." I don't know him that well, I'm thinking. Yeah. He goes, "No," and he stares at me and he goes, "You must come. There's an album that you need to hear right now." "What album?" "It's by a guy named Jackson Browne. You must hear this now." And I'm looking into his eyes and I'm going, I believe this guy really means that. So I thought, okay, well, I'll change my plan. And I went to his mom's penthouse on Wilshire Boulevard, top floor. Went in there, no furniture. That was the first thing you notice. It's a kind of fluid party with no furniture. But there's a record player in the corner on the carpet. little record player, little speakers. And there's this one record up against the wall. It's the picture of Jackson Browne when he was 18 years old or whatever. And I put the record on and I played it, flipped it over, played the back, flipped it over, played the front again, played the back again. And I had my life change because I had been going to UCLA, where my kind of musical life was, let's all get in the garage and smoke a joint and jam on our guitars for 4 hours. That was my musical thing. I would jam with my homeboys. And all these guys at UCLA were like conversant with the entire history of Broadway musicals. So when we go to the parties in college, someone would get at the piano and all my friends would sing all these songs that I'd never heard. Right? And I'm like, stranger in a strange land. So I felt inadequate musically until the night when I heard Jackson Browne and realized, oh, this guy is not a virtuoso by any means. He's kind of based on folk music, and he's a genius. And this is great art. And I just saw him, at the Greek Theater
wow.
6 weeks ago. And I mean, he's 10 days younger than me, so I feel like his big brother. And
wow.
So that's how I became a musician. I started writing after that.
I would say Parenthood was pretty famous, and I had a nice part in Parenthood. I played Steve Martin's sister, and I was married to Rick Moranis, and so that was pretty exciting. And I had a very small part in a very big movie, When Harry Met Sally.
You were unforgettable.
I was unforgettable because the other characters talked about me. My part was very small, but it seemed big because my character had such an impact on the life of the Billy Crystal,
right,
who played Harry.
Right.
And so that was pretty funny. Then I did a scary one called Arachnophobia, which is a good Halloween movie, especially if you're afraid of spiders.
Same question.
It is a great movie.
Same question to you.
Say again?
Same question.
Same question.
Yes.
I made a movie called Powwow Highway,
Okay.
that George Harrison produced, about two Cheyenne Indians trying to. One of them is on a spiritual quest, and one of them is trying to save his sister from a frame job. I did a movie with John Wayne called The Cowboys that was pretty famous. Just celebrated its 50th anniversary. And I did a movie with Meryl Streep called She-Devil. I just found it
What?
yeah, I don't want to. I'm not gonna. I was about to tell you all the actors who.
No, I gotta watch
you
that.
gotta see that.
I never knew.
Oh,
Hey, you've
yeah.
been holding out on me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep it a secret, but
I gotta
it's pretty
watch
special.
it.
Yeah, oh, you'll love it.
Oh yeah, I will.
And of
love
course,
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep, and Roseanne was in it.
Oh right.
And she used to
right.
watch Santa Barbara.
What?
The first day I saw her, she goes, "Oh, I just love you in Santa Barbara. I love that show, just all about Santa Barbara."
Oh, wow.
So we had, and that was a nice thing to say to me as I walked on the stage,
yes.
right?
Really nice.
And Meryl Streep is my hero, and I was.
She's a goddess.
She's a goddess.
She's the best.
She's
For
the best.
me,
That's
she
what-
is the
for-
best of our
For
generation.
me too.
Of the last 100 years. As much as possible.
Which decided to
Everything that they're asked to do, short of, having sex with a producer, they should do. As much experience as they
You have a
can.
special
Perfectly
for-
said.
What?
Perfectly said.
Yeah.
Do you have a special opinion in this case?
Oh yes, just that they should just do as many plays, as many student films. Every time somebody says, "Hey, I'm doing a play reading," it doesn't matter if it's free.
Yes.
You never know who you're going to be working with that's going to help you one day. You never know who you're doing a favor for by just reading their script, who's going to turn out to be a Pulitzer Prize winning playwright. You never know. Just do everything that's offered to you.
That's beautifully said.
Opinion of I see.
Well, the same thing. Some people say, you know, who should take my pictures, or, you know, do you know somebody? I was hoping to get invited to this party, whatever. To me, that's the thing. If you want to be an actor, you need to act. You just need to do as much as you possibly can. In my last year at UCLA, I kept going to the dean and saying, well, my grades are so terrible because I'm having, you know, this issue and that. But the truth was, it was because all I was doing was art. And I did 11 plays in one year. You know, it got in everything I could possibly get, everything I could do. You know, going to concerts, listening to musicians, going to poetry readings, just art, and basically, that's the way it happens. As Harley says, you know, it's a community event, and it becomes a family. When you work on any show, it becomes a family, and the kind of body of people that do it are a family, and you need to be meeting members of the family and doing the work.
I'm writing my sixth novel, and I narrate audiobooks.
Okay.
And I finished 2 projects last spring, and then I had foot surgery. So now I'm just waiting for my next role until I can walk a little bit more
Any
gracefully.
plans for next role?
No.
Okay. No yet.
Whatever comes up.
There you go. I'm in the Netflix reboot of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I have a good role in that.
What?
Yeah, isn't that cool? See, that's the
Oh
best.
my God.
That's,
Oh,
yeah. See?
I'm such a fan.
Yeah, that's a
Oh my
wonderful
gosh.
thing, isn't it?
Oh
And-
my gosh.
Oh, and
We got to talk about this all
we
the
got
way
to talk
home.
about it on the way home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Behind the camera.
I come into the, you know, the climactic story, the Water Tribe sequence of it, and it's like,
Of course, the best tribe.
the best tribe. Gotta say, I mean,
Yeah.
who's going to argue that? But they cast these 3 young Canadian Indigenous actors, and they are teenagers, and they are fabulous as the leads. You know, you just Gaio Landio, Ian, and Gordon Cormier. Ian Owsley. And I mean, they're phenomenal actors. And I got to play this master waterbender, Master Paku, and that was real special. So that's the most exciting thing I've done in a while. Yeah. And I will give you praise for the interview you did when you met the president the other day, last month, early in September, I believe it was. You came down the stairs and you were doing a stand-up live piece.
Yes, you saw my
I saw that, yeah, and I translated all the comments from your followers, and I just think you did a wonderful job. And I thought it was really telling that as the man came down the stairs and saw you, he went like that. That really impressed me. And so praise to you for doing a beautiful job like that. I know that must have been extremely nerve-wracking to do, but you did a real nice job.